WWE celebrates and gives final farewell to Hulk Hogan. An emotional tribute you can't miss. The wrestling world is shattered as WWE pays a heartfelt tribute to the legendary Hulk Hogan, who has sadly passed away. This emotional video captures exclusive reactions, unseen backstage moments, and the final farewell that brought tears to superstars and fans alike. From the iconic red and yellow to his unforgettable legacy, see how WWE and the entire universe honors one of its greatest icons. Expect emotional promos, tribute packages, legends returning to say goodbye, and an unforgettable 10-bell salute. The wrestling world is silent. The lights dim. The arena, once filled with the thunderous roar of fans, now echoes only with memory. A single spotlight bathes the entrance ramp in golden light. No pyro, no music, just stillness. And in that stillness, the reality finally sinks in. Hulk Hogan, the immortal icon of professional wrestling, is gone. WWE and the world is in mourning. On this night, Monday Night Raw didn't open with fire or fury. It opened with tears. A 10-bell salute echoed through the arena as fans and superstars alike stood with heads bowed. Some clutched yellow bandanas. Others wore vintage Hulkamania shirts. But everyone from ringside to the highest nosebleeds stood united in grief. Roman Reigns stood alongside John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and even Triple H, each of them silently reflecting on the man who paved the way. Hulk Hogan wasn't just a name, he was a foundation. He was the original megastar, the one who made it all possible. Backstage, the atmosphere was just as heavy. The usual hustle of crew members, camera operators, and talent coordinators had given way to something far more solemn. Posters of past WrestleManias featuring Hogan had been framed and placed on stands. A large video monitor replayed clips of his greatest moments, his clash with Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. The unforgettable crowd reaction when he returned in 2002, his final match in Japan. These weren't just nostalgia clips. They were a reminder of the larger-than-life man who once carried the company on his tanned shoulders. WWE aired a touching tribute package, not just the typical reel of career highlights, but something much deeper. Narrated by Vince McMahon himself in a rare, emotional voiceover, the video chronicled the rise of a man who transformed wrestling into a global phenomenon. Vince didn't hold back. He was more than a superstar, he said, his voice trembling. He was a symbol of hope, strength, and belief. He was the heartbeat of an era. Fans around the world watched with wet eyes as the screen flickered with images of a young Hogan running wild in Madison Square Garden, flexing to millions and delivering his signature leg drop with unmatched flair. As the tribute package faded to black, Raw returned to a silent arena. Until the music of Real American began to play. But this time, no one came out. There was no red and yellow blur sprinting through the curtain. Just the song. And as the chorus hit, "I am a real American," the crowd erupted, not with excitement, but with pure, aching emotion. Chants of "Thank you, Hogan" filled the space where cheers once reigned. WWE superstars were given the platform to speak from the heart, and they did so with reverence. Seth Rollins, eyes red and raw, spoke backstage in a candid segment. "When I was a kid," he said, "Hulk Hogan was the reason I fell in love with this business. I used to stand in front of the TV, tear my shirts, and flex like him. He made me believe I could be something bigger than life." Becky Lynch followed, wearing a leather jacket emblazoned with Hogan's famous lightning bolt symbol. "He was a hero to millions, especially to little girls like me who weren't supposed to be wrestling fans in Dublin," she shared. "But Hogan made me feel seen. Like I mattered." Legends from across generations returned to pay tribute. Ric Flair, visibly shaken, stood center ring and didn't bother hiding the tears streaming down his face. "We fought, we drank, we laughed," he said. "He was my brother in every way but blood. And now, the ring feels empty without him." The Nature Boy paused, hand over heart, before whispering the final words, "I love you, brother." The Undertaker made a rare appearance without his signature character. This was not the dead man. This was Mark Calloway, grieving a friend. I didn't always agree with him, he admitted, but I respected him. We all did. Because when Hogan walked into a room, he changed the energy. And when he walked into that ring, he changed history. Even Stone Cold Steve Austin, known for his brash personality, stood subdued. Wearing a simple black Hogan Forever t-shirt, he raised a beer to the sky backstage. "This one's for the big man," he said, clinking his can against an empty one before downing it. "What you gonna do, brother, when the legend of Hulkamania runs forever?" Social media, too, was engulfed in tributes. WWE changed all their profile photos to black and white Hulk Hogan logos. Fans flooded X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with their favorite Hogan moments, with many sharing personal stories, how watching him helped them through tough times, how his charisma uplifted them during childhood, how his words of inspiration echoed in their lives long after the TV turned off. The locker room had placed a pair of Hogan's yellow boots by the gorilla position empty, but standing tall. Next to them sat his iconic feathered boa and a red bandana folded neatly, as if waiting for him to return one last time. But everyone knew he wouldn't. Still, it was their way of saying, "You will always have a place here." And then, in a deeply emotional moment, WWE announced a special segment called One More Match, where holographic technology recreated Hulk Hogan walking down the ramp to his theme music, flexing, pointing, and posing just like the old days. Fans in the audience cried. Children who never saw him live cheered as if seeing a real-life superhero. It wasn't real, but it felt real. And in that moment, time stood still. Later in the night, Michael Cole broke down while calling the tribute show. His voice cracked. "There will never be another like him," he said. Hulk Hogan wasn't just the face of WWE. He was WWE. Even Roman Reigns, the tribal chief himself, stepped out of character to address the crowd. "I don't do this often," he started, "but this man, this icon, he inspired my entire family. Without Hulk Hogan, there is no bloodline. There is no Roman Reigns. I owe him everything." The crowd, stunned into silence, slowly began chanting, "Hogan, Hogan, Hogan." The segment ended with a graphic, "In loving memory of Hulk Hogan, 1953 to 2025. But for the millions watching, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like a legacy being passed on. Back at the WWE Performance Center, a massive mural of Hogan was unveiled by Triple H and Shawn Michaels, a hand-painted masterpiece capturing every era of his career. The young Hulk with lightning in his eyes, the WCW Rebel, the returning icon, and finally, the legend embracing fans in his final years. "We'll make sure every new talent walks by this every single day," said Triple H, "so they never forget who built this house." Meanwhile, Nikki Bella posted a heartfelt message, saying, "He made us feel like we could do anything. That's the power of a hero." Randy Orton, who rarely speaks out, posted a single photo of Hogan lifting him as a child with the caption, "Thank you for lifting all of us." As the night drew to a close, Raw ended not with a match, but with a silent fade to black. No outro music. No chants. Just an image of Hogan, smiling under the arena lights, frozen in time. And perhaps that's the most fitting farewell. Because Hulk Hogan wasn't just part of wrestling history. He was wrestling history. The red and yellow. The training, the prayers, the vitamins. The body slams heard around the world. The words, "What ya gonna do?" shouted in millions of living rooms. He was the reason many fell in love with wrestling. The reason WWE became global. The reason so many believed that even if the odds were against you, you could still win if you just believed in yourself and in the power of Hulkamania. But more than that, Hulk Hogan was a feeling. And though the man may be gone, the feeling remains. In the cheers of a crowd. In the wide-eyed gaze of a child. In the heart of every fan who ever dreamed of ripping off a shirt and becoming larger than life. The wrestling world will move on. But it will never be the same. But even as the lights dimmed on Hulk Hogan's earthly presence, the aftershocks of his departure continued to ripple through every corner of WWE and beyond. Tributes poured in not just from wrestling legends, but from across the entertainment industry. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who once stood across the ring from Hogan in one of the most iconic WrestleMania matches in history, released an emotional video message just hours after the news broke. Eyes red, voice low, The Rock said, "There's no me without Hogan. He welcomed me when I was still trying to find my identity. He gave me confidence when I was unsure. And when I stood across from him in Toronto, that wasn't just a match. That was magic. That was history." It wasn't just the stars of today who were affected. Wrestling schools across the country held special training sessions in his honor, teaching aspiring wrestlers about the psychology Hogan brought to the ring. How every gesture, every glance, every hand to the ear could drive thousands into a frenzy. Promoters and coaches reminded their students, you don't need to fly to be great. You need to connect. And nobody connected like Hulk Hogan. Even AEW, WWE's biggest competitor, opened its weekly show with a graphic honoring Hogan's legacy. Tony Khan, who had only met Hogan a handful of times, tweeted, "Wrestling transcends companies when a giant like Hogan passes. We honor him not as a rival, but as a pioneer." That gesture alone sent a powerful message to fans. Hogan wasn't bound by a brand. He was the brand. Meanwhile, inside WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, the flag flew at half-mast. Employees were offered grief counseling. And in the boardroom, discussions began about how to preserve Hogan's legacy permanently within the WWE landscape. Rumors began swirling about renaming the WWE Hall of Fame building in Orlando, still under construction, to the Hulk Hogan Hall. A fitting tribute, considering it was Hogan who headlined the very first Hall of Fame class in 1993. Backstage, the mood was unlike anything WWE had seen in years. Superstars who had never even met Hogan were breaking down. One anonymous WWE producer described the locker room as completely numb. He said, "It was like we lost our North Star. Even if he wasn't physically here every week, his spirit was. His influence. His fire. It lived in everything we did." In a rare unscripted segment on SmackDown that week, Cody Rhodes sat in the ring alone. No pyro, no entrance. Just Cody, a mic, and the memory of a man who had inspired generations. "My father told me about working with Hogan back in the day," Cody began, voice tight. "And when I met him for the first time, he said, 'You've got Dusty's fire, brother. Keep it burning.' I didn't understand it then. But I do now. And I will." That night, the crowd gave a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 full minutes. No one chanted. No one screamed. Just applause. A sea of people unified in grief and gratitude. Elsewhere, fans gathered at Hogan's Beach Shop in Clearwater, Florida, now transformed into a makeshift memorial. The entrance was covered in flowers, red and yellow candles, signed shirts, and handwritten letters from fans of all ages. Some were from adults who had grown up idolizing him. Others were from kids who had only seen his matches on YouTube, but felt the weight of his loss all the same. "I never got to meet him," one fan wrote on a poster taped to the glass. "But I feel like I lost a piece of my childhood." A few miles away, the Anoa'i family held a private vigil. Roman Reigns, the Usos, Solo Sikoa, and others gathered in silence to honor the man who, in many ways, helped legitimize the very bloodline they now represent. "He put Samoan wrestling on the map," said a family member. "Without his respect and support back in the day, we're not here." The outpouring from the wrestling community was immediate and overwhelming. Mick Foley posted an emotional blog, recounting the first time he saw Hogan perform live. "It was Madison Square Garden, and the air changed when he walked out," he wrote. "He wasn't just larger than life. He was life." The audience didn't react to him. They erupted for him. Shawn Michaels shared a photo of himself and Hogan from a house show in 2005, the very tour that became famous for their dramatic and contentious SummerSlam match. "We didn't always see eye to eye," Shawn admitted. "But I never stopped respecting him." You can't argue with the truth. And the truth is, he was the standard. Even CM Punk, never shy about calling out legends, tweeted a single line, the business will never be the same. Thank you, Hulk. The WWE Network made all of Hogan's greatest matches and promos free to watch, launching a special section titled Forever Hulk. Viewership on those segments skyrocketed. Fans young and old relived his battles with Randy Savage, his clashes with Ultimate Warrior, his heel turn in WCW's NWO, and his unforgettable return to WWE in 2002. The legacy was alive even if the man was no longer with us. And yet, beneath the bright lights and televised tributes, the personal grief still loomed large. Shane McMahon, who had grown up around Hogan as a family friend, posted a heartbreaking message. He was like an uncle to me. He used to give me noogies, call me little dude, and say I'd run the business one day. I just wish he could have seen my kids grow up. They loved him too. Stephanie McMahon, in a tearful interview with ESPN, spoke of Hogan's softer side. He had this big, booming voice. But when he was around my daughters, he was gentle, patient, kind. He made them laugh. He called them the future of the company. That's who he was. A giant with a heart. Linda Hogan, his ex-wife, released a statement that captured the sentiment shared by millions. We shared a life, a family, and a history that can't be erased. Whatever our differences, he was the father of my children and the greatest showman the world has ever seen. As plans for Hogan's public memorial service began, fans prepared to flock to Florida for one last farewell. WWE announced a special tribute show titled Hulkamania Forever, set to air live from Tampa's Raymond James Stadium, the very venue Hogan had helped sell out during multiple WrestleMania events. It would feature returning legends, tribute matches, and at the heart of it all, a final address from Vince McMahon himself. But before that grand farewell, one final private moment took place, a small, intimate ceremony at Hogan's childhood church in Augusta, Georgia. Only close friends and family were invited. No cameras. No media. Just silence, memory, and faith. Brooke Hogan, holding her father's favorite bandana, broke down mid-tribute, whispering, "I thought you were immortal." Her brother Nick stood beside her, arm around her shoulders, unable to speak. And yet, amid the grief, there was grace. Because this is how legends live on, not just in the fireworks and music, but in the quiet. In the tears shed backstage. In the stories passed down between generations. In the way an entire industry pauses to say thank you. Hulk Hogan once said, "To all my little Hulkamaniacs, train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins." But what he gave us was far more than that. He gave us hope. He gave us wonder. He gave us a reason to believe. Even in loss, he left us stronger. Even in death, he runs wild. The official Hulkamania Forever tribute show was unlike anything WWE had ever produced. Not just another televised special, it was a sacred goodbye. A celebration of color, charisma, chaos, and character. Tens of thousands packed into Raymond James Stadium, with millions watching around the world. And as the sun dipped behind the Florida skyline, the entire arena was drenched in hues of red and yellow, casting a surreal glow across the crowd, as if the sky itself was honoring the man who made those colors iconic. Before a single bell rang, a massive jumbotron lit up with a countdown. 10, 9, 8. But this wasn't the countdown to a match. This was the countdown to silence. The final 10-bell salute. As the final bell tolled, a hush fell over the stadium like a weighted blanket. No chants. No movement. Just the echo of that final bell hanging in the air like smoke. Then slowly, the crowd began to rise, not for a match, not for a return, but for a legacy. Tens of thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, raising their arms in Hogan's signature pose, pointing to the heavens. The lights dimmed, and a video montage played, this one narrated by none other than Paul Triple H Levesque. Unlike the first tribute aired on Raw, this version was raw, unfiltered. It wasn't about statistics or title reigns. It was about impact. Hogan didn't just headline shows, Triple H said. He was the show. He didn't just entertain us, he carried us. And now we carry him. Fans wept as they watched Hogan backstage with young cancer survivors, laughing with Make-A-Wish children and giving pep talks to nervous rookies moments before their first big match. It wasn't all leg drops and promos. It was love, legacy, leadership. When the lights came back on, a stunning display covered the ramp. Dozens of WWE superstars, past and present, lined both sides, holding candles. At the center of the ramp stood Roman Reigns, flanked by Cody Rhodes, Bianca Belair, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, and John Cena. Together, they slowly escorted an empty, custom-made ring cart adorned in red and yellow down to ringside. Draped across it was Hogan's classic feathered boa, his tattered bandana from WrestleMania 3, and a replica of the WWE Championship belt he made famous. The audience didn't cheer. They sang. Softly, as if carried by a whisper, the chorus of Real American began. At first, it was just a few fans. Then more. Then the entire stadium. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. The music swelled. The ring lit up in golden spotlight. It was no longer about grief. It was gratitude. Then came the returns. First was Bret the Hitman Hart, walking slowly toward the ring with tears streaking his face. We had our battles, he later said, but damn, I respected him. He placed a pair of pink shades on the turnbuckle, a final tribute to a man he once warred with but ultimately loved. Then Shawn Michaels. Then Edge. Then even Kevin Nash and Scott Hall's son, representing the NWO, the faction that gave Hogan a second life in WCW. But perhaps the most shocking return of the night was Vince McMahon himself. Looking visibly older, more fragile, but emotionally composed, Vince walked slowly to the ring, microphone in hand. The crowd didn't boo. They didn't cheer. They simply watched. He paused, looked around, then said quietly, "This company, this industry, wouldn't be here without Hulk Hogan." The crowd responded with thunderous applause as Vince continued. He made wrestling larger than life. He turned a traveling sideshow into a global empire. And he did it by believing in something bigger than himself, the power of connection. Then,